Some nursery plants don't look dangerous at all, because the risk isn't in the appearance, it's in the details. The sap, the leaves, the berries, or how the plant behaves once it's established. A beautiful pot on a store bench can be a skin irritant the first time you prune it. A glossy leaf can become a real problem if a curious cat chews it. And a fast-growing vine can turn from decorative to invasive in a single season if it escapes into nearby soil. In this Rooty Fruity episode, we're taking a calm, research-first look at 8 plants you'll commonly see for sale, why they're flagged in safety guides, and what safe handling actually looks like in a home garden. We'll talk placement, gloves, pruning habits, and how to recognize warning signs on labels, plus a few alternatives that give you a similar look without the same level of risk. And when a plant carries spiritual or cultural stories, like being seen as protective or unlucky, we'll treat those as traditions with context, not promises, while staying anchored in horticulture and practical home safety. Number 8 is the true lily, including popular gift plants like Easter lily. And this one catches people off guard because it's often sold as a symbol of cleanliness and celebration. In gardens and supermarkets, lilies are marketed for fragrance, elegant blooms, and that bright, fresh home look. The danger isn't about thorns or sap on your hands. It's about cats. Many Lilium species, and often related lilies sold nearby, are associated with severe toxicity in cats, and even small exposures, like nibbling a leaf, chewing a petal, or licking pollen off fur, can become a veterinary emergency. That's why this isn't just a be careful plant in cat homes. For many owners, it's a don't bring it inside plant. There's also a practical detail people miss. Pollen sheds easily. Those yellow-orange grains look harmless, but they stick to fabric, countertops, and noses. In a quiet living room, a cat brushing past a vase can pick up pollen without anyone noticing. Growing conditions. Outdoors, most garden lilies like full sun to partial sun with cool roots, meaning sunlight on the stems, but mulch or companion plants shading the soil. They prefer well-drained, fertile soil and even moisture, not soggy conditions. In containers, drainage is non-negotiable. Safer alternatives. If you want a similar elegant bloom indoors and you have cats, many people choose orchids or African violets instead, depending on your light. And if you love lilies outdoors, keep them in fence areas and treat cut flowers like something that never comes to the front door. Number 7 is giant hogweed. And if you've ever seen photos of it towering over people, that's not camera trickery. It can grow into an enormous, umbrella-flowered plant that looks like a dramatic, wild meadow feature. The danger isn't mystical. It's chemistry plus sunlight. The sap contains furanocoumarins, compounds that can make skin extremely sensitive to UV light, leading to painful blistering after contact, sometimes hours later, when you're already back inside thinking everything's fine. Here's the nursery angle. True giant hogweed is more commonly a wild invasive problem than a deliberate retail plant, but it can be confused with lookalikes, especially other large umbellifers like cow parsnip, angelica, or ornamental wildflower mixes that include related shapes. The risk is highest when someone clears brush without identifying what they're touching. Growing conditions. It thrives in moist, rich soils along streams, roadsides, and disturbed ground. In many regions, it spreads aggressively by seed, outcompeting native plants and creating dense stands. That ecological harm is part of why it's treated seriously. Practical safety. If you suspect it, don't handle it with bare skin. Long sleeves, gloves, eye protection, and careful disposal matter, because even a quick snap of a hollow stem can fling sap. If sap contacts skin, washing promptly and avoiding sunlight are common first steps, but local guidance differs, and serious reactions need medical advice. For gardens, the safest strategy is simply don't invite confusion. If you want that airy, umbrella flower look, choose clearly identified ornamentals from reputable sources and label them. Number 6 is Foxglove, the tall, bellflower classic that makes cottage gardens look like they were painted. Nurseries sell it in bloom because it's hard to resist. Vertical spires covered in speckled trumpets, usually purple, pink, or creamy white. It's also a plant with a very real chemical backbone. Foxglove contains cardiac glycosides, compounds that have been studied and used in medicine in carefully controlled doses, but that are dangerous when ingested casually in a home garden. The concern is straightforward. Children, pets, or even adults who mistake it for an edible herb should not be able to reach it. Foxglove has a long thread of folklore in Europe, often linked to fairies and hidden people. A way older communities explain a plant that could heal in one context and harm in another. That mythology is part of its charm, but it's also a historical warning label. Beauty with consequences. Growing conditions. Many foxgloves prefer cooler conditions and partial sun. Bright morning light with afternoon shade is ideal in warmer regions. They like rich, well-drained soil that stays evenly moist. In hot, dry weather, they can droop and finish flowering quickly. They're often biennial, meaning you may get foliage the first year and blooms the second, though some varieties flower sooner. Practical habits. If you grow it, plant it toward the back of borders, label it clearly, and wear gloves when handling if your skin is reactive. Deadhead carefully, and don't let seed fall into areas where kids play. For a similar vertical bloom without the same risk, many gardeners use snapdragons or delphiniums, depending on climate. Number 5 is citronella grass, and this one earns its spot on the list in a different way. Nursery is often presented as a mosquito plant, the kind you set near a patio and forget about. The scent is real, and citronella oil is widely used in repellents. But potted grass by itself usually doesn't create the same concentrated effect you get from a formulated product. The bigger risk, for many gardeners, is the false sense of security, and the fact that the plant's oils can be irritating to sensitive skin when you handle or crush the leaves. There's also a common mix-up. Some stores label scented geraniums as citronella plants, while true citronella grass is a tropical cymbopogon. They smell similar, but they're not the same plant, and the care requirements differ. Growing conditions. Citronella grass wants full sun, warmth, and consistent moisture in well-draining soil. In cooler climates, it behaves like a seasonal container plant, cold nights slow growth, and frost can kill it. It gets large, wide, and fountain-like, so it's happiest where air can move around it. Practical safety. If you have sensitive skin, wear gloves when trimming and avoid rubbing your face afterward. If you're relying on it for mosquitoes, treat it as a supporting actor. Reduce standing water, use screens, and consider repellents that are designed and tested for that purpose. For a similar patio vibe without the marketing confusion, many gardeners choose aromatic herbs like rosemary or lemon balm. Still fragrant, still useful, and easier to manage in mixed plantings. Number 4 is a castor bean plant. Sold in some nurseries as an instant tropical look for gardens, huge, star-shaped leaves fast height, and seed pods that look like little spiky ornaments. It's dramatic, architectural, and it photographs beautifully in a border. That's exactly why it slips into carts. It looks like a statement plant, not a hazard. Here's the issue. The seeds contain ricin, a highly toxic compound. In real-world gardening terms, the main risk is accidental ingestion, especially if children are drawn to the unusual seed pods or pets investigate fallen seeds. This isn't a plant you handle carefully and forget about. If it's present in a family garden, it demands deliberate placement and constant awareness. Culturally, castor has a long history tied to castor oil, used traditionally for lamps and, in some places, as a folk remedy. That connection can blur the safety message. The processed oil is not the same as the raw seeds, and tradition doesn't erase toxicology. Growing conditions. It thrives in full sun, warmth, and fertile soil with consistent moisture. In hot weather, it can shoot up quickly, which means it also produces more biomass and potentially more seed pods, if left unmanaged. Practical guidance. For most home gardeners, this is a skip. If you ever grow it for ornamental reasons, treat it like you'd treat a locked cabinet. Keep it away from pathways, remove seed pods before they mature, and never compost or leave seeds where they can spread. Many gardeners get a similar bold leaf effect from canna lilies or ornamental bananas, depending on climate, without the same seed risk. Number 3 is the sago palm, and the first thing to know is that it isn't a true palm at all. It's a cycad, an ancient plant group that predates many modern trees, which is part why it looks so sculptural. A stout trunk, a perfect crown of stiff, glossy fronds, and that slow, always tidy growth that landscape designers love. Nurseries sell it as a tough patio statement plant, especially in warm regions. The danger is concentrated and often underestimated. All parts are considered toxic if ingested, and the seeds, often called nuts, are especially risky for pets, particularly dogs. People usually don't buy it thinking toxic plant. They buy it because it looks clean and tropical and it tolerates neglect. Then a fallen seed becomes a chew toy. That's when things can turn serious fast. In some cultures, cycads have a complicated history, used ornamentally, and in certain places even processed traditionally for starch after careful preparation. That careful preparation is the key point. It's a reminder that tradition often includes safety steps, not magic. Growing conditions. Bright light to full sun outdoors is ideal. Indoors, it struggles without strong light. Use fast-draining soil, think gritty mix, and water only when the top layer dries. Soggy soil invites rot. It prefers warmth and handles drought better than overwatering. Safer placement. Keep it away from play areas, and don't let seeds drop where pets roam. If you want the same architectural look with less worry, many gardeners switch to parlor palm indoors or non-toxic, pet-friendlier foliage options in similar forms. Number 2 is Dieffenbachia, often sold as dumb cane, and it's one of those houseplants people buy because it looks instantly lush, broad, speckled leaves that brighten the corner even when the room isn't perfect. In offices and apartments, it's marketed as low-fuss greenery. The risk comes from what's inside the tissues, needle-like calcium oxalate crystals and irritating compounds. When a leaf is chewed or the sap gets into a mouth, it can cause intense burning and swelling, especially dangerous for pets and small children, because even a small bite can become an urgent situation. It's also a plant with a complicated name history. Dumb cane is linked to the temporary speech difficulty that can happen after exposure. The nickname shows up in older plant lore and has been repeated for generations. Today, it's better understood as a toxicology caution rather than a casual label. Growing conditions. Dieffenbachia prefers bright, indirect light. Near a window with a curtain is ideal. In low light it survives but stretches and loses pattern. Use a chunky, well-draining indoor mix. Keep soil lightly moist, letting the top couple of centimeters dry between waterings. It likes warmth and higher humidity, so dry winter air can crisp the leaf edges. Handling habits. If you prune, repot, or snap a stem, wear gloves and rinse tools. Place it where pets can't reach. Cats especially love testing leaves. If you want a similar look with a gentler safety profile, many growers swap it for calathea or certain peperomias, depending on your light. Number 1 is Oleander, a plant that nurseries often sell as a tough, drought-tolerant shrub with beautiful clusters of pink, red, or white flowers. It's popular in warm climates because it handles heat, poor soil, and roadside conditions like a champ. The problem is simple and serious. Nearly every part of oleander is toxic if eaten. Leaves, flowers, sap, even the dry clippings. In horticulture circles, it's a respect plant. Fine in the right place, risky in the wrong one. Historically, oleander has been planted around homes and courtyards across the Mediterranean and South Asia for privacy and ornament. In some communities, people also treat it as a boundary plant, kept near edges of property as a symbolic keep-out marker. That's cultural meaning, not a guarantee of protection, but explains why it shows up in so many landscapes. Growing conditions. Full sun is ideal. It blooms best with strong light. It tolerates many soils as long as drainage is decent. Water deeply but infrequently once established. Overwatering is a more common mistake than underwatering. Safety habits. Don't plant it where toddlers or pets roam, and never leave pruned branches accessible. If you keep it, wear gloves. Avoid touching your face while pruning and bag clippings. The scent of the flowers can feel heavy in still air. Pretty, but a reminder that this is not a snackable garden. If you like this video, please hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more videos. Thank you.